Good morning, class. Today I'll be talking about Proposition 55 and how it ensures educational stability in California by taxing wealthy Americans who make above $250,000 annually. So I know what you're thinking, like, why should you believe me? Why should you listen to me? I'm not a political major, I'm not an economic major, but one thing I am, and you guys are as well, are college students. And this affects us directly because I don't know about you, but I am broke and I cannot pay higher tuition fees than I already am. So another thing you're probably thinking is, will it work? Well, of course it'll work, because back in 2012, or the previous proposition, which is pretty much the same thing as Proposition 55, states that we should tax the wealthy Californians so that we can prevent something that happened prior to 2012, which was 7.7% of California teachers were actually laid off in California. As well as that, we got $4 billion in budget cuts. School programs like art or band, they were all cut, so we weren't unable to do that. I know this because my mom was a teacher and she remembers doing it, and she managed to keep her job. And the reason why she managed to keep her job was not only because she was a teacher, but she was also a child care provider as well, and at the time it was in demand. So there will be three things I'll be talking about today. The very first one would be the origins of Proposition 55 and where it came from. The second thing I will be talking about will be how it affects us as a community, to be more particular in college students. Very last thing I will talk about would be the economic impact it has as a whole. So that's lower class, middle class, as well as the upper class. So the very first thing I'm going to talk about would be the origins of Proposition 55. It actually came from Proposition 30 back in 2012. Governor Jerry Brown, who helped lead the millionaires' tax increase as well as Brown's tax increase, stated that we would actually make $9 billion in revenue if we tax wealthy Americans by 1%. Let's go say they make $250,000 a year, rather than paying 9.3 income tax, it would be 10.3. Those who make $400,000, rather than paying 10.3, they'll pay 11.3, and so forth. And the way this works is that with that money, 89% of it actually goes to K through 12th graders to help fund high school band. And the reason why they did that, give 89% to them and only 11% to college students and other things like healthcare, is because there are more high school students in California than there are college students. There's also a higher demand in public high schools rather than private high schools. So this will help fund field trips. I don't know if you guys remember going to the 6th grade camp. I don't know if you guys experienced that. But this will actually fund it. And Governor Jerry Brown led this proposition back in 2012, but he's continuing it for 2016 for additional 12 years. So it ends 2018 and it'll continue to 2030 if it does get passed. And the very second thing I will be talking about, it would be the impact it has on us as college students. And the reason why I'm talking about this in particular is because we get 11% of what we make throughout annually. So around $6.8 billion is what we're going to make. We get 11% of that. This money will actually go not to our programs, not to band, not to art, but it will actually go to our tuition fees. It would actually cut them down by approximately, they estimated, around 50%. And this affects us directly as college students because, I mean, who would want to pay more? You know, I don't know, I don't qualify the BOG fee waiver, I don't get any FAFSA or anything like that, so I would rather keep it fairly low. And according to Alex Johnson, who's actually the Children's Defense, Executive Director of Children's Defense Fund in California, he claimed that we will save California billions of dollars in our debt rather than having to pay the initial $4 billion that we would be indebted. So, meaning to say that if we get this law proposition passed, Californians will actually have better opportunity into going to educational system where we are more treated more fairly than private students, and where we have more opportunity, and asking for a very little portion coming from the wealthy Americans who can most afford it. So you have to think about it that way, that you have these wealthy Americans who are actually trying to push down our economic standpoint so that they stay up. And I don't know if you guys remember previously, which I'm going to go into my next point, which is economics, is that Californians would have to pay, Jerry Brown actually estimated $9 billion. It was cut to $6.8 million because a lot of the wealthy Californians that did not like this proposition actually moved to Nevada. According to Charles Stein, who is a real estate owner in Nevada, he said more than 50% of his sales in 2014 were actually were actually because more than 50 were actually because this Proposition 55. So can you believe that you have these people who make a substantial amount of money that do not want to help us economically, so that we can experience the same educational privileges that private schools have, or to even go to little programs like art and music, so that we can have a full view of how our educational system should be. So now that I talked about the origins of it, I talked about the economic standpoint for us the students, and the economic standpoint for the lower, middle, and upper classes. I hope you guys are more informed about Proposition 55. I hope you guys are more aware of what we could have if this proposition does get passed for another 12 years, and that we are able to do a lot of things that we weren't able to do many years ago, which be whether it's programs, or if it's us paying for tuition or healthcare, helping out those who need it the most. Thank you.